Getting to the heart of the matter. Back to Guy, Ben, and Frank with more Inside the News.
Welcome back to more of Inside the News. Glad to have you with us. We've got Frank Vernuccio top left, Ben Brunson in the bottom middle. And if you're not watching us on YouTube or the AUN TV network, check us out and then you'll get to see what's going on here. How you doing, Frank?
Doing well in chilly New York.
Hey, Ben, how you doing down there?
Doing great. Getting a little too warm here, but I'll live through it.
All right. We were talking a little bit off the air and I was going to share something. I said, well, we'll do it on the air. I went out to breakfast earlier today and down here in Florida and walk in, no mask, and, you know, met a couple of buddies and you could literally see within the restaurant, it was about 50-50, half with no mask and half with mask, and people walking in with masks. And I mentioned to the guys, I said, you can immediately tell the people who are not from Florida, who are from other states, because they're wearing their mask and they're scared to death. And you can tell the people from Florida because we're living and we're strong and we're just going on our life as normal. Am I correct on that, Ben?
I think that sums it up well. People from New York insist on wearing their face diapers. So good on you for doing so.
Yeah.
By the way, there's the rise of capitalism in face masks. You know, they never would have been produced, I think, by government. But now in New York, there's a whole trade in face masks with advertising on it. So if you have a small business or if you have a company, the name of the company is on the face mask. So it's a fascinating little thing.
Yeah, we ought to get a WBV face mask thing.
Absolutely.
And what do you think, Frank?
Sounds like an interesting idea, except of course we never wear them.
Yeah, that's right. We never wear them. Okay, Ben, you brought this up, and it's an interesting topic to start our international comments here. The policies and the politics of the EU versus COVID, which blends right in with what we were talking about.
Well, it turns out the EU has made quite a hash out of their vaccine policies. And it has been proven to be a huge early win for Brexit because the UK is way ahead of mainland Europe in terms of vaccinations. In fact, the UK is well ahead of the United States in vaccinations per capita. The UK has had 42 million people vaccinated, which is a vaccinations dose, which is a huge percentage of their population. We're approaching about 65 million or so, but obviously we have a much larger population. Whereas in mainland Europe, Germany and France are way behind the US and the UK. And they have a lot of disagreements in Brussels as to what to do. They've badmouthed the messenger RNA vaccines, the early vaccines, Pfizer, BioNTech on one side and Moderna on the other. And in Germany, they have banned, for instance, those vaccines from being administered to people over 65 because of a misperception or bad science, the view that they were not adequately tested in the United States on people over 65. And I can assure you the FDA very much included that cohort in their testing. So this has been insanity in Europe. It has led to great chaos and a lot of pain and suffering on mainland Europe because they are lagging so far behind the rest of the first world in terms of getting vaccines out. And meanwhile, in countries like Israel, almost 100% of the population has now been vaccinated. So kudos to Israel for leading the way. But great news for the UK, but what a disaster it is right now in the EU. And I don't know that the EU will survive this. It's a lot of infighting as a result.
All right. Well, Frank, you know, President Biden, he tried to use some kind of a surgical strike on Syria, but it didn't have the vaccine on it. It just killed a lot of things.
Well, of course, the strike in Syria, we were told by the Biden administration, is supposed to send a signal to Iran, but that's not true. It was supposed to send a signal to the American people. As we discussed on the show on a number of occasions, the Obama-Biden administration inexplicably tilted towards Iran for reasons that have never been explained, never made clear. Even towards the end of the Obama administration, sending over pallet loads of untraceable cash to the mullahs in Tehran. With the start of the Biden administration, the administration is signaling that they want to go back into the Iran nuclear deal, which is insane. By 2025, it would allow Iran to build nuclear weapons in full compliance with the current treaty. Because the American public is beginning to get a bit antsy about all this, why are we getting involved in a deal with Iran that's going to allow them to build nuclear weapons anyway? So sending this minor airstrike towards Iranian-related forces in the Middle East is supposed to make the American public think, gee, our president, he's tough on Iran. We don't have to worry that he's looking out for our interest. It's a ruse. It's nonsense. It's nothing more than publicity. It's a wag the dog type of action that unfortunately too many in the media are falling for.
You know, Ben, you're our resident expert down in that area of the world. And I think Frank started to nail something there at the end. I believe that he did this missile strike to kind of say, look, see, I'm going to be tough on these guys and tough, but yet behind the scenes, he's going to placate Iran. They're going to get more cash and more money. And he's going to sign another deal like Obama did with John Kerry, the worst Secretary of State we've ever had. What a loser. Yeah, I said it. That's right. Ben, go.
Well, you guys are exactly correct. This strike was for U.S. consumption. The Iranians have not reacted to it because they know exactly what they're going to get with Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. Their economy is about to go back into overdrive. They're about to have the financial spigots turned wide open once again. The U.S. will take all of the embargoes and tariffs off of Iranian products that force the Iranians to sell their oil at a cut rate price. And all of that money will now go back to funding terrorism around the Middle East, which is exactly what the Iranian mullahs do when they have money to spend. They fund Hezbollah, they fund the Assad regime, they fund Hamas, they fund the Houthi militia in Yemen, they fund terror. The Iranian militias operating in Iraq, they fund terror everywhere around the Middle East. The biggest reason why, go back 5 years, and we had a resurgent ISIS and everything else. And that all collapsed under Trump because Trump turned off the financial spigot and Biden's turning it back on.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Plus, they're trying to take the football away from Biden. It's not because he can't run. He's not a quarterback. We're going to talk about that. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News. Here's Guy, Ben, and Frank.
Welcome back to our third segment of Inside the News. Glad to have you with us all across the country and on our radio affiliates, AUN TV and YouTube. Ben Brunson, Frank Vernuccio, myself, Guy Wehman. Okay, Frank, let's get right into it. And as we were talking about the football, it's a little case of nuclear codes and buttons and things like that. Frank, go.
Well, of course, the purpose of having that football near the president at any time is due, unfortunately, to the short amount of time it would take to launch a nuclear strike against the United States. It's about 15 minutes if it's from an ICBM based in Russia or China, and only 5 minutes if it's from a submarine-launched ballistic missile against the United States. The talk of taking the football away from the president and having this meeting of congressional leaders who are going to debate what to do in the 5 minutes between the launch of a missile being detected and its detonation someplace in the United States, the concept is absurd on the face of it. You can assume only two factors. One, and this is the one that you almost shudder to think about, are there people who really want to jeopardize the security of the United States or at least make it more vulnerable to blackmail from nations like China or Russia, or potentially Iran or North Korea? On the other hand, is there a realization that the rest of us knew years ago that Joe Biden is so incapable of functioning in an emergency situation that he should not have access anywhere near the nuclear button? Either possibility is frightening as hell, but there it is.
You know, I didn't think of your option A, but option B has been out there, and I think it's more of an option B that that they know that. Let's face it, President Biden is not completely. I mentioned off the air in pre-production, and both you guys have acknowledged that. Is that we're waiting for Joe Biden to wake up so he starts doing it. The fact is, he's never going to wake up. He's too far gone in this thing, Ben. And you said, I like that. Go, Ben.
His mental frailty and physical frailty is obvious for the world to see. I think you can make the obvious prediction that he will venture from the White House less and less often as the days and weeks progress here. His recent trip down to Texas was a disaster. He lost his mental train of thought numerous times, and it's quite obvious and painful to watch. He is getting clearly more tired, and he's in only his first days as president of the United States. I have serious doubts whether he'll last even this year, let alone 4 years in office. But let's go back to the concept of mutually assured destruction. That's what
Ben, before you go into MAD, it was interesting, the comparison, because here you have President Biden and you have Governor Greg Abbott, who is very bright and very smart and very quick on his feet, and President Biden, and you kind of mentioned that down on his Texas trip, Ben.
Well, Biden is painful to watch. It's hard to watch him walk. He walks like a frail 95-year-old at this point. And mentally, if he's not reading off of the cue cards, off of a teleprompter, he gets lost very quickly. And his wife jumps in to try to salvage him and get him pointed back in the right direction, or he's got to pull out his cue card out of his pocket. But it is very bad, and it's clearly going to accelerate on the decline as he goes forward, because that's what the presidency does to every person who assumes the job. It is a 24/7 level of stress that you have to be in great shape to be able to handle. And this man is not up to it. That's just the reality. And the Democrats have recognized that with this crazy call. This is being led by serious Democrats to remove his power, which would invite a first strike against the United States. It is just insanity. MAD is a horrible concept, mutually assured destruction, except that it's kept us from nuking each other into oblivion for the last 65 years. So it works. And to take the sole authority away, the whole reason the 25th Amendment was passed in 1967 was to make sure that one individual would always have the power to retaliate against the Soviet Union if there was a nuclear war, and they successfully decapitated the senior leadership of the United States. That's why it exists, and you cannot change that. So this is just an admission by the Democrats that Joe Biden should not be the president. He doesn't have the mental capability of doing it. And you're going to see increasing calls and pressure in coming months for him, frankly, to step down and to let Kamala Harris take over. There will be, if you're willing to suggest what they've just suggested, that you take the nuclear option away from the president, then you're just a small step from calling on the president to resign from the presidency. And you're going to hear Democrats calling for that before this year is out.
Okay, who's calling the shots in the White House? And Frank, you have so many ideas and thoughts going through your head right now. I saw a picture this last weekend, and it was a very interesting group photo. Jen Psaki was there, and all the people in the White House was there. And in the bottom left of the photo was Valerie Jarrett. Now, she was a lot of the voice in the ear of Obama back then. But who's calling the shots in the White House? It really gives pause to think there, doesn't it, Frank?
You know, let's go back, or as Jen Psaki would say, let's circle back to Biden and his capabilities. There's a problem when we talk about Biden slowly or even rapidly losing his capabilities. There are capabilities that he never had in the first place. If you go back over the history of Biden's tenure in public life, which is most of his life, there's no nice way to put this. The man is not particularly bright and never was. His previous presidential run was knocked out because he was found to have plagiarized the speech, and not a particularly great one either, by the way. His speeches, if you go back over the congressional record, have never been particularly fluid or intelligent. The press took this individual who has been a glad hander, someone who has been a smile, an Uncle Joe, a good old Union guy Joe, middle class Joe, whatever name they particularly gave to him in whatever particular election he was running in, which covered up the fact that he really didn't have the capability of whatever position he was running for. Government is often mocked, but the fact is it does take a certain amount of intelligence to look at complicated policies and world issues and come up with correct solutions and answers to them. Joe Biden and many in government like him simply don't have that capability. We were sold Joe Biden in the presidential election because he was, let's be blunt, a white middle-class looking guy, despite the fact that he's a multimillionaire. And we were told that this guy is middle of the road, don't worry, despite the fact that he's leading a radical left-wing party. He's really okay. He's really in the center. It was an illusion fostered on the American public by a media that was complicit with the hard left. Now we've got Joe Biden in the White House. He's not capable of running the show at all. Kamala Harris is probably, and the radical left is power behind the throne. We have to be honest in what's going on. We talk about AOC's influence on Joe Biden or Kamala Harris's influence on Joe Biden. They don't just have influence on Joe Biden. They are the administration at this point. And the sooner we as a nation realize that, the more we'll be able to deal with the danger that we're facing.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the Durham report. It will never see the light of day. And then there's a lot more going on with spring break down here and across the country. This is Wehman and Brunson and Vernuccio Inside the News. Glad that you are with us. We're going to take a time out. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio Inside the News.